Good morning, everyone. My name is Sergio Alcubilla. This is our first Surge with Serge uh, uh, podcast, and I'm here this morning with a very special guest and a really good friend of mine and really great supporter with John Witeck. John Witeck, I know we first met through the Hawaii Workers Center. It's a nonprofit organization that advocates for the rights of low wage workers and recent immigrants. And I've really gotten to know John just this past few years, and he's been such a incredible person, incredible friend with a really deep history of really pushing for what's right here in Hawaii and throughout the country and around the world. It's just really been a privilege to get to know you, John, and thank you for taking the time to join us this morning.
Sergio, mahalo for your nice comments. I'm privileged to know you and to be involved in this campaign, and I hope you win.
Thank you,
Bring
John.
it home.
John is very humble, but just a really brief, background on John. John's been a longtime labor leader. Actually marched in Selma
Mm.
way back in the '60s with Dr. Martin Luther King, and he's really got a scary story, about that time. But it's just really fascinating, just the history of this country and where what John was fighting for, in the '60s and what we're fighting for now. 60 years later, we're still fighting for some of the same things. But yeah, one of these days, hopefully John can share some of that story. After that, I know John came over here to Hawaii with to study at the East West Center, right, John? And then
Yes.
afterwards, really fought against the war in Vietnam. Taught history at Roosevelt High School for a while, and then it's been a long time labor leader with originally with United Public Workers (UPW), and since then he also started Hawaii Workers Fund. Hawaii People's Fund, which is really such a great organization that does really great work in the community. And John's roots and work runs deep here in the community, and just such a privilege to get to know him.
Wow. Thank you, Sergio. Mahalo. I also acknowledge your role in founding the Hawaii Workers Center, and thanks for that. And I love seeing your pro-labor advocacy for low wage and immigrant workers, and you've impressed me by that. I saw something you posted on Facebook where you, in your canvassing, you met a African American gentleman who's been here for 50 years, who came from Mississippi, and I love how you shared with him and related to him on the racism that plagued his life when he was growing up there. And you related it to the experience of Filipino Americans and other immigrants who may also face that kind of racism or discrimination. So that really moved me to see that on Facebook. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, John. Yeah, it was such a surprise. Just a brief story as I was canvassing. We're actually from the same small town in Florida.
Wow.
Yeah,
Mhm.
not that, he's about 6 miles away from the town where I ended up going to high
Mhm.
school. And this town is just, sometimes it feels like you're stepping back in time because you can
Mhm.
see how, the town was divided in the past along the railroad tracks. And
Mhm.
one side of the community was on the other, and of course the other side was on the other. And just we shared some of the history there, but at the same time he shared some of the his own history growing up and during his time, and he ended up actually going to Vietnam. And on his way back, he just decided he didn't want to go back to kind of that
Mhm.
way of life, and he's been able um, just to settle down here for a long time. But yeah, just some of that shared history, and it just it just brings to light some of the things that we're facing here in Hawaii, right? With a lot of our recent migrants and recent immigrants, and especially with the Micronesian community and a lot of the ones that come from the Kofa countries, and just how we treat them, and how we have that sense of I don't know, not really giving the sense of respect that they deserve. But yeah, thanks for bringing that up, John.
You're welcome. And I think Filipinos in Hawaii have also suffered more than a lot of people, and Kanaka Maoli, as well as the Micronesians. And I was impressed 3 years ago or so when I met you and you got involved in helping us fight for low wage people, unemployed workers, and for immigrant communities. How did you get motivated to do that?
Yeah, um, gosh, I've been working with Legal Aid Society of Hawaii for almost a decade now, and it's really direct services, right? It's really trying to help the person. Um, but for me, it kind of just resonates that just the backgrounds of the people that we're trying to help. Uh, as you know, John, I come from a working class family with a single parent mom with 6 kids, and um,
Mm,
just really that experience is what I think what pushed me to be in public service to begin with, and to start at Legal Aid. And when a few of the board members with Hawaii Workers Center had told me about what we were trying to do, it just really struck a chord with me, just knowing that there's so many people out there that are getting taken advantage of, especially when it comes to wage theft, and
mm.
and just that mission really resonated with me. But yeah,
I
we
know for
still keep
me,
going.
I I know for me as a union agent, I was 26 years with the UPW, and you're fighting individual cases. You're trying to get this guy's job back or this woman's pay correct, and you're fighting, putting out all these fires. I always felt every day you didn't really know what would come to your plate. But in me, it developed this need to address systemic change. Because you can't do it. You can do one by one, but you're not really putting a dent into the problem. And I wonder if maybe that also happened to you as a legal aid attorney. You see issues out there like housing. So many people can't afford it in Hawaii now. Average house, $1 million. 48% of households in Hawaii, they can't meet their basic needs. The minimum wage was ridiculously low, and even with the hike, it's still inadequate to support a family in Hawaii. So I wondered if that also came to your mind and made you decide to run for Congress. And what do you hope? What do you think you can do there?
And I think you said it exactly, John. I think for the longest time we've been trying to help the person, right, by providing direct services. But I think it's come to the point where we need to expand it to helping the people. Um,
Mm,
right, we've been representing the person for so long, and so many people at a lot of the nonprofit organizations we work with, and especially with legal aid, right? There's only so much we can do, so many cases we can take, so many people we can help.
mm,
But yeah, as you mentioned, you see the systemic problems. That it's a larger problem. It's a larger issue. So if we can take some of those policy issues from the top and bring it together, with the people, with the work at the bottom and serving everyday people, I think that's really where change can actually happen.
mm.
When you have that merging of the two, the bottom up and from the top down. But yeah, I hope we can move from serving the person to serving the people. I think in Congress we can definitely do more to address some of these changes, to address some of these systemic issues. And that's what I hope, especially at the federal level, we can bring resources down, to the community. We can bring resources back to the state, to address some of these issues. Yeah, yeah. So many people are leaving the state just because it's hard for them to try to survive, with our cost of living and with homes being over $1 million. But um, it's time that our representative leaders do something to address some of these issues.
I know. And in Congress, the budget is very crucial. And I just saw, to my disappointment, the Democrats have added 45 billion to the 813 billion defense spending budget. A couple of the progressive Congress people are pushing to cut that by 100 billion. But it just seems to me at a time when the planet is under such threat, and I know you have children that you adore and spend time with. And I have grandchildren, it makes that urgency of doing something about climate change and the environmental challenges and freeing up land too that we could use for housing in Hawaii help. Hawaii has the greatest number of homeless per capita. It
Yeah.
seems like if we could use more of those monies for constructive, progressive causes in basic needs, it would be great. I think that's probably part of your program.
Yeah, you can really tell the priorities of a community or society, right, by what they spend their money on, and
Mm,
it's really disheartening to see how much we spend when it comes to war and destruction and killing each
mm,
other, right? Instead, we should be, um, you know, putting resources into investing in our future, investing in our grandchildren and our children, investing in a sustainable planet, right? Because I mean, otherwise, if we don't have a planet to live in, everything is for naught. Um,
yes.
you know, instead of looking at destruction and looking at ways that we destroy things for humanity, we should look at ways to build things up and actually, make things better and just leave this planet better than when we found it coming in. Um, so let me see. Someone, okay, uh, John. So someone was asking about thoughts on the Supreme Court decision on Roe versus Wade and gun violence. And let me ask you first, John. I know you have a lot of good thoughts on this. Just wanted to hear your thoughts on these.
Uh, it was disgusting, that decision. And when you read the decision itself, the paternalism towards women and the uh, disrespect towards women by the justices was horrible. Uh, the upside of it may be that women and all of us will get motivated to really kick Republicans out and out of congressional seats and even local legislators, because they're it just seems like they've embraced not only an anti-female, anti-woman position, but also a white supremacist position. So white racism is sort of creeping, I mean, rearing its ugly head. And I think the elections will be very crucial, the midterm. Um, in the, I would also favor adding people to the Supreme Court and just doing more to reverse. You have a minority on the court that is doing their own agenda, doing it rapidly, taking away environmental protections, attacking labor, attacking immigrants, attacking women who have a right to decide, make decisions on their bodies and on their lives. And to see the Supreme Court do that, they've actually divided the country into states that have rights and states that don't have rights, and people who have rights and people who don't have rights. It's a very dangerous situation and very unfair, because there should be equal justice in this country and due process, and the Supreme Court is undermining all of that. So I'm really disturbed and mad, and we should go out and demonstrate too.
Yeah, yeah. No, thanks, John. I mean, it's at one. I think at the one side is it's great to see people just being more active and taking
Mm-hmm.
a part in our democracy. I think from what I've seen, just from the January 6th hearings, I mean, just so fragile how our democracy really is, right? And it takes people
Mm-hmm.
just being more involved, really being part of the process and making their voices heard for our democracy to keep going. Um, but yeah, on gosh, really on Roe v. Wade. I think it's important that we try to codify,
Yes.
uh, the reproductive rights of women and actually put into statute. Um, yeah, with this Supreme Court, um, yeah, I don't know if it's something I've thought about. I don't know if we increase the number. I think that's one way. Another way could be we do every 10 years rather than the lifetime appointments, but maybe every 10 years just do some sort of judicial review or before they get just like what we do here in Hawaii, where our chief
Mm-hmm.
justice serves every 10 years, and then another, and then we can decide again, if he wants to be appointed again for another 10 years, and then that way there's some sort of I feel like
Mm-hmm.
some sort of safety valve, or especially when besides the impeachment process, especially when some of these justices decide to go rogue, um, which I feel like is kind of happening now. But
And they lied. Yeah, they
yeah,
lied. They said Roe versus Wade is established precedent where
That's
you
right.
can't reverse that, and then
Yeah.
these liars are doing the opposite.
My concern too is also with the establishment clause, right? I'm concerned that sometimes some of the religious, um, you know,
Mhm.
beliefs of some of the right wing is starting to creep into our politics. I mean, I believe people can believe whatever they want to believe in terms of their faith, and that's what our establishment clause is really about. But at the same time, we need to keep church and state separate. And
Mhm.
I feel like some of these decisions are based on religious views. Um, that maybe not everyone holds, but I just feel like that's also a danger to the establishment clause.
Do you think some of these judges who lied should be impeached?
I think so. I think there needs to be a mechanism to hold them accountable, right? Because
Mm.
when you're being confirmed, it's easy for you to say whatever it is you want to say to make sure that you get confirmed. But once you get in there, I mean, what are some of the repercussions if what you're saying during your confirmation hearings is actually not what you're acting on? You're acting on upon now, because the Senate bases their decisions to confirm you whether or not based on kind of that interview process,
Mhm.
right? Just like when you interview for a job, if you lie on your resume, eventually you get caught, and there should be
Oh,
consequences. That's right. That's
I
right.
like your term limits idea too for Supreme Court justices. It's crazy to have them elected for life or
Yeah.
appointed for life. I was going to ask you
Yeah.
on guns. They seem to be of the persuasion everyone should have a gun in states, or the government should not limit or put any controls on that. What's your feeling? You have kids in school. I have grandkids in school. We've seen these about every other day, some killing in public, mass shooting, or shooting up schools. How do you feel about that issue?
I mean, that's one of those things you worry about, right, as a parent or as a grandparent or someone with young children, or when drop off your kids in school, and then next thing you do, you hear something in the news of another school shooting. I think here in Hawaii, we're fortunate, right, that we have some of the more sensible gun laws in the country in terms of preventing gun violence. But I know that's under attack with some of the rulings that just came out of the Supreme Court's ruling in New York. And I
Mhm.
know more people are going to be are looking to apply for gun permits. I understand that, but at the same time, I feel like our children's right to live outweighs people's right to high capacity magazines or high capacity rifles. Um, it's yeah, I'm glad that our Senate or our legislators are now starting to take action, but I feel like it's not enough. I think that we need to go back and ban, have a assault rifle ban that we did that
Mhm.
lapsed a few years ago. I feel like yes, I understand people's right to bear arms, but you really don't need an assault rifle or an armor light rifle, for hunting purposes or for self defense. And I think we do have a state interest to make sure that people don't possess these type of guns that overpowers our police forces, right? When our police forces don't stand a chance with some of the guns that are out now in the street, I think we do have a state interest to make sure that gun owners are responsible and they don't have these type of high capacity rifles that overpowers a lot of the police forces.
Sergio, you were good. You're an early supporter of the struggle to get Red Hill cleaned up or to decommission that. How do you feel about what else needs to be done? They're saying it may take like 3 or 4 years to empty the tanks.
Yeah, it just never made sense to begin with. I think a lot of groups, from the first leak in 2014, were already sounding the alarm, and it took such a long time for elected leaders to actually do something and actually take it seriously, right? And I'm grateful that now, because of the grassroots effort to actually close it down and decommission it, that the Navy's finally listening, Secretary of Defense is finally listening, but they're not moving with the sense of urgency. As it continues to pollute our aquifer and it continues to endanger really our drinking water supply, where's that sense of urgency? Because this is a crisis; it's an emergency, right? It's not enough to just throw money at it, but we need to make sure that the military acts, with a sense of haste with it, a sense of urgency, and really protecting our public health and safety. But I them hearing them say that it may take a few years to clean it up. Um, Gosh, I feel like there's so. I mean, there's. And I don't know if you saw that video, John, where just that the leak was just
Yes,
it was
massive.
overflowing,
And they
right?
let it go for how many? I forget how long,
Yeah,
35 minutes or so.
yeah, isn't that? I mean, I feel like they must have known that it was probably leaking before in the past, and it wasn't until people were getting sick that it became that the public they let the public know about it. And I think if it wasn't, for people stepping up to say something, um, that it may have continued to be just behind the curtain, right? And it would have just kept on going. But yeah, I think I'm grateful that a lot of the community groups are still pushing them to just make sure that they move with some sort of urgency with it, because it is an urgent situation that needs to be addressed.
And it seems the military is doing that kind of polluting conduct in other places. The leases for places like Pohakuloa, Kaupu, and some of these other places is coming up in a few years. And there was massive like public testimony to say end the leases, return the land. I think that would also, if that could be done, in other words, demilitarize Hawaii, stop making it a target for attack, use the land for constructive civilian uses, and deal with the homelessness and the housing issues we have here. How do you feel about those kinds of issues?
Yeah, I just feel like the relationship with our military has been so one sided. For a long time, I feel like a lot of our elected leaders have just been a rubber stamp and just saying yes to them for just really establishing that culture, right? Because of the money and the jobs that come in, that they just automatically say yes. And I think that type of relationship is it really endangers all of us. Just one of my favorite beaches is going up to Kailua, right? But just recently, right? There's news where I think what is it, fecal bacteria is so high there from the
Mm,
discharge from the Marine Corps base that
yes.
you know it's unfit to swim in. I mean, imagine that one of the most beautiful beaches in the world is being destroyed because of the discharge from the Marine Corps base.
Right.
Um, and yeah, I think just the harm that's being done. You know,
Right.
I know with the military leases coming up, I think we can demand that they become better stewards, better partners, because at the end of the day, I mean, they're simply um, guests to these land, right? And it's just like as if you were the homeowner and you invited guests over and they took over and just
Yeah.
disrespected your home. I feel like
Well, it
that's been.
bothers me also that all this land was taken illegally. The U.S. occupation and throwing off Queen Liliuokalani
Yeah.
was illegal and wrong. The U.S. apologized, but we're still living with the effects. And I think, we need to try to end a lot of that occupation.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you about Build Back Better. You criticize Ed Case for being a major obstacle to that. Do you want to say anything more about that and what those kinds of measures could have done for Hawaii?
Yeah, we were in front of his office until the very last day because we weren't sure whether he was going to vote yes or no on it, right? It's one of those things where, this thing would have helped so many people here in Hawaii, so many families that could have helped, with affordable childcare, with universal pre-K, with paid parental leave, with an additional $300 in your pocket,
Hmm.
for having children. But those are things that would have helped us now. Um, and it was really that group of nine, right, part of that Blue Dog Caucus in the House, that really pushed back and said, no, we can't afford this. But of course, we're willing to spend this much for the military budget, but we can't afford this to invest in people. And I feel like that weakened it, that weakened the momentum, and it gave cover for like Senators Manchin and Sinema in the Senate to basically defeat the bill. And now that the bill's basically fallen to pieces, I want to pick up a lot of those pieces that I feel like would have helped so many people here, not just here in Hawaii, but across the country. I mean, things that, especially now as we're dealing with really the cost of living, um, I want to pick up those. There's so many good things in there that I think we need to continue fighting for.
And that bill also had environmental um, assistance for dealing with climate change. And you look at Oahu or all the islands, the threat of rising waters and the impact environmentally and economically on Hawaii is massive. But it seems like not enough is being done today. And I'm not sure where Hawaii will be in 20 or 30 years. I think Waikiki may be underwater for a good part of it. How
Yeah.
do you, and the fact that Case opposed that and eventually voted for it, but delayed it enough that it never got fully passed.
Yeah. You know, I feel like the Green New Deal resolution is the starting point. I mean, once I get to Congress, I'd love to sign off or support it. I feel like it's a good starting point to actually take this conversation seriously.
Mm.
I think sometimes it's, just like when a hurricane's coming, sometimes there's those that feel like they don't need to prepare. They don't feel like there's nothing, um, that they're not going to be affected until the storm comes and then, your house gets blown away. I feel like
Mm.
that's what's going to happen too with if we don't take some of these
Mm.
impacts of climate change seriously. But I believe the Green New Deal and the investment in clean technology and the investment in just making sure that we have some sort of future for our children to live in. I think just that resolution, at least let's start with that and let's take this seriously and let's invest in that. Instead of investing and rubber stamping a lot of things that we spend trillions of dollars on and billions of dollars on, let's really invest in our
Amen.
environment.
You've also supported the PRO Act. I think it means protection of the right to organize and other pro-labor measures. Do you want to speak on some of these and why you feel that way?
Yeah, and John, with both of us on Hawaii, on the board of the Hawaii Workers Center, right? We've always been pro labor. We've always been supporting, the people's right to organize. I just feel like a lot of our unions are now under attack. They've, uh, if our unions were as powerful as people say they were, then we wouldn't be struggling to raise the minimum wage. We wouldn't be struggling, to get some of these contracts ratified with a lot of the hotel and tourism industry that a lot of the unions are struggling with, right? But yeah, I think the PRO Act, for just either in the private sector and also in the public sector, I think that needs, the PRO Act can be something to help the public sector workers as well, just to make sure that a lot of this union busting that's happened in the past, or the efforts to union bust it. And it's kind of tricky. The other day I got this questionnaire from the right to work committee, right? And they use some of these names where it sounds like, yeah, that's a great idea, or yeah, I agree with that. But at the end of the day, who is it really going to benefit? Is it going to benefit a lot of these union members, a lot of the workers? Well, basically, unions have helped their families come out of poverty, helped them really establish a middle class, right?
Mm.
And as we see this greater disparity in wealth, where 10%, 10% own all the wealth, in the country. I think there has to be something that where we can push back on. But John, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. I mean, you've got more experience with me when it comes uh, to labor and really being at the picket lines.
Yeah, I agree. Labor is really under attack on the continent and even here. Uh, Unions like Local 5 are fighting absentee landlords, big insurance companies, investment firms who really don't care about conditions in the hotels. After COVID, they brought back maybe two-thirds of the workers for these Waikiki hotels, and there are a third of the workers still not back in the job. And yet these hotels have raised their rates for guests. They've cut down room, services to guests. And so it's good to see how Local 5 is fighting these kinds of attacks. I think we need more control over absentee ownership of the hotel industry. We need control over the use of land, like in Kaka'ako, which they allowed these expensive condominiums to go up without, I think, even adequate infrastructure below. Um, we need to support workers to increase their wages, to unionize. The PRO Act and acts similar to that in Hawaii would make it easier to organize. Today is fairly difficult, to get so many people signed up. There's so many anti-employer devices to fight unions. One of them is they have compulsory meetings of the workers, and they tell them all the bad things about what unions will do, and you have to pay big dues, and et cetera, et cetera. Those kinds of things would be illegalized under the PRO Act. Um, there's a lot of contracting out. So where you have a union, the employer will contract out some of the services to a non-union company. So that's going on. You have so many low wage. I think 48% of workers in Hawaii make less than a living wage, which is less than about 17 or $18 an hour.
Wow.
We work with a lot of those people in the um, Hawaii Workers Center, and many are immigrants. So there are many local people too that are in that boat. So I'd like to see labor more united. I'd like to see it grow beyond 20% of the workforce. So I think those are things I've been trying to fight for and help unions win decent contracts.
Yeah, when I was in working at Macy's in Waikiki, I remember it was part of our training. We had to sit there and watch, what we would do if a union rep came and approached us, or we watched this video on why unions were so bad, and
Yeah.
the
They
dues that
treat
you
them
have.
like an epidemic, don't they? It's like a
That's right. But
danger.
yeah,
And
I mean,
companies like Walmart and Amazon are really
I know.
fighting unions like crazy.
But I feel like that's such a. I know that's in the private sector, right? And I feel like under the PRO Act, if that's something that we can ban or at least, make it equal, so that yes, if you're going to talk about the negatives of the union, then you should also be able to invite a union rep to be able to talk about the positives of the union, so that
Exactly.
your workers are better informed.
And when you see the contribution unions made to Hawaii, they were the civil rights movement. We didn't have a Martin Luther King, but we had union leaders like Jack Hall and many others. And they really fought for equal rights and equal treatment of local people against the oligarchy at that time. In 1954, there was an electoral revolution that put Democrats in office. It seems like we may need another one of those,
Yeah.
because a lot of the legislators we have seem to have forgotten that legacy and that mission that the unions and the Democratic Party were then united on. So I think we need to do all of that.
Yeah. Agree, John.
You're a good man, Sergio. I think I'm going to vote for you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that vote, John. Yeah, please be sure to tell your family and your friends too. But
To vote.
yes, yeah, or to register to vote and then to make sure that they vote. It's coming up soon. But
Mhm.
I mean, John, just this conversation has just been really fun. I love to sit here
Thank
and
you.
just talk story and just hear really some of your thoughts. But I- you've done this for a while now, John. But let me just ask you, what keeps you going to keep fighting the good fight? As we say, and it really inspires someone like me, right, to see kind of the example of those that's been doing it for a long time and just the changes that you've been able to impact. Um, but John, I know there's so much more you could be doing with your time. But every day you still go out there and fight the good fight. And what keeps you going?
I'm never bored, but I think because there's so many needs out, every when I retire, it's so good. I'm going to do some painting. I'm going to do spend time with grandkids, which I do. But there's just so many needs and so many issues that demand. I think the thing that motivates me, besides meeting people like you and younger people who want to make a difference, and there's thousands of them, and then people like you who are willing to run, um, is that I have grandkids, and I see there's so many threats or so many hazards ahead. Like you, I wanted to leave the world better, for that generation and for their kids. And when I see the what's happening on the continent with racism and attacks on about all the gains on women's rights, on environmental programs, on voting rights, which I fought for in Selma, Alabama, it really shocked me and scared me. Um, and so it made me more motivated, realize I can't just be a quiet retiree and
Yeah,
sit in the background and go out and drink beers with buddies, although that's good to do still. But I have to go out there and keep trying to make a difference because conditions, our hope was we would settle all this back in the 60s and 70s, and everything would be good. No war, no abomination of weapons, climate under control, et cetera, et cetera. And we haven't succeeded, so we need to keep striving. So I'm encouraged by my grandkids, by your kids who come out and hold signs with you, by the labor movement itself, the civil rights movement that is resurging, the women's movement, and the strong demonstrations and issues, mobilizations there. There's a lot of people who think like us, and I think we're used to thinking we're just a minority. But I think we are the vast majority, and these people, this small minority of people who control a lot of our institutions, need to be pushed aside. Corporate dominance needs to be ended. Military occupation needs to be curtailed. People need to have, all people, given a chance to have a decent life here and other places. So that's what I'm dedicated to. I'm going to do my damn best. And yours is one of the few electoral campaigns I've been really excited about because I think you are so genuine. Your story rings so true. And I think if you get elected, you will really, your presence there will really help make a difference, even though you're one of 435 or however many. I think your example will make a difference. And your election would make a difference to politics in Hawaii. So I'm excited to give some time, whatever time I'm giving to you.
thank you, John. I mean, thank you so much. That just means the world to me to hear from you. I know you're such a uh, gosh, your history is just so vast, and all the work that you've done.
You
I'm
too.
really standing on your shoulders. I gosh, I was reading the history of Representative John Lewis, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
How he was really the conscience for Congress, and I
Hmm.
hope that's what we can bring back into the halls of Congress. I think
You
sometimes
can do that. Hmm.
greed just overcomes so many aspects of our society, but I think it's time that our conscience kind of steps in and puts an end to that. Because
Hmm.
that's what can really push it back. And that's what I hope my candidacy can really be all about, is that we bring this our conscience back into our policies, into our politics, and
Yes.
we have conscientious people really stepping up. Um, but
Yes.
John, this has just been such a pleasure. I do want to put a plug in for this Friday, July 15th,
Yes.
at my Pahu United Church of Christ. Please
I'll
come
be
at
there.
6
Hmm.
p.m. We are there's a group of supporters that are putting together a meet and greet. So please, if you're on social media and you're listening to this, please come join us then. Um, but John, I uh, just really appreciate this time. Thank you for taking the time, and I'll give you the last word, John. Thank you.
Sergio, I've been enjoying surging with you. Uh, I like that. Surge with Sergio or Surge with Serge. But also, people should know you can donate to the campaign. Go to sergioforcongress.com, and I think through that link you can make a donation. Which I'd like to see radio ads. I'd like to see more print media if we can. I know your opponent may be putting out a lot of stuff, and we are putting out, yeah, like your postcard, mailing postcards to friends. If you need some of these to mail, just let the campaign uh, know, and they can come your way. But Sergio, thank you for letting me have this discussion with you, and we all want you to win.
Such a pleasure, John. Thank you. And yes, please, everyone, please check out the website, sergioforhawaii.com. If you'd like to join the campaign, volunteering, or if you'd like to support with a donation, we can really use your help. Your ballots are going to start dropping July 26th.
Mhm.
Primary final date is August 13th. Please get your family and friends. Make sure that they're registered to vote and spread the word as we, surge ahead. So thank you, John, and
Right on. See you, Sergio.
thanks, John.
Aloha, brah.